Christian parenting.
Are you facing the challenge of single parenting? Join us for some encouragement today on Family Vision.
Hi, my name is Ray Rienow. Welcome to Family Vision with my parents, Dr. Rob and Amy Rienow, strengthening families through practical, encouraging, and real conversations.
Hello, Rob Rienow here with Visionary Family Ministries alongside my bride, Amy.
Happy to be here with you today.
We just celebrated Easter. Now, Christmas is a big one. I think for most families, it's a bigger celebration with the wonderful gifts, but Easter's the pinnacle of all our celebrations, the high point in our Christian year. It's the day we celebrate Jesus breaking out of the tomb, rising from the dead, conquering sin, death, and the devil. And we know there's still spiritual battles being fought, but the war is decided because of Easter. And it's because of what Jesus did for us through his death on the cross, his resurrection, that we can be forgiven of our sins and we can have a personal relationship with God through Jesus.
Can I share one of my favorite Easter traditions for me, but I don't know how the kids feel about it as they get older, how I wake everyone up super early with the blasting worship music. And so we're not, but that's one of my favorite things to do on Easter.
You do wake us up with blasting worship
and I
music.
love it. It brings a tear to my eye. But as the kids get older, I don't know if they have the same enthusiasm. But anyway, it's one of my favorite things to do on Easter.
Well, today we're going to focus on bringing encouragement for single parents. It's a personal issue for me. My parents divorced when I was 15. They had a rocky relationship. I remember the day they got divorced, spring of my sophomore year of high school. I remember the day that the papers were actually signed and selling our house and moving and then living with my mom and my brother as I finished high school.
And we thought that it might be a good way to approach this topic today with a series of questions that we often receive from single parents when we are at our conferences, or they email them to us. And here's the first one. Question number 1. I am exhausted. My job wipes me out. Then I come home, there's dinner, laundry, the kids need help with their homework. I feel like all the stuff I have to do leaves me no time for just connecting with my kids. That is probably one of the most common questions we have. And I want to start first with sort of a little illustration from my own life in parenting with a different scenario. Obviously, I wasn't a single parent, but my husband did travel a lot, and I do understand facing all those things alone on a I won't even claim to understand that I understand it, a single parent doing that all the time, but just those basic daily grind that you have to do by yourself where you are exhausted. And I remember with the first kids, I would read every book on parenting and that I could kind of get my hands on, and specifically on sleeping issues, where, I would try to follow a pattern and make sure that everyone doing everything right. Well, when 4 kids probably in, I realized that the path of least resistance became the best path. And how I would define that would be what path would give the most number of people in this house the most amount of sleep. And whatever that path was, that was the path I was choosing. So I think often as a single parent, you really need to discover what are your paths of least resistance when it comes to the daily grind. And understanding that you're not going to be able to successfully get all the laundry done or successfully get cooking done all the time, successfully help kids with your homework, is just not going to be possible to feel like you're succeeding on all of those fronts. So what causes the most peace in your home, starting with you, the single parent? What will make your life run the smoothest? So if you have a big homework night that you know is coming, what's the dinner plan that is going to make the most people happy, eat the most food, in the sense that it's okay if you have macaroni and cheese 3 times a week. That really is okay. And I often think there's so many things thrown at us as parents in general that we feel like we can't achieve these things. Well, that is magnified in a single parent household. That mindset, that sense of I can't do this and somehow I am damaging my kids, And so what would cause the most peace in your home so that you can have less stress? And what do you have to just say, okay, I'm not going to worry about laundry. I'm going to make sure we have enough of the clothes that we need to wear. And if there's a massive pile of laundry, and just to encourage you, I've never been able to accomplish my laundry task on any regular basis. So the point is, if you have this illusion that all these other homes are doing it perfectly, let me just tell you that's not true as well.
That's a great way to say it. You're talking about being realistic about success. I mean, the way I would give encouragement to any parent, but especially a single parent, is to say success is impossible. And you're like, well, that doesn't sound very encouraging. Well, what I mean by that is that if you make a list of everything you've got to do in a given week or a given month, okay, everything with work, everything with the home, everything with the kids, everything with the yard, whatever, you make that list. Are you going to get done to the end of the week, the end of the month, and review your week, review your month, A+, 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 I did it all? Never. You're never going to come to an end of a week like that. So what that means is you've got to make some choices about what's going to get your best and what's going to get less than your best. And what we want to encourage you with is that to give your absolute best to building a heart-connected relationship with your kids so you can help them build a heart-connected relationship with God. Just like Amy said, you may not have the cleanest house, you may not get the promotion at work, you may not be able to be at church events as much as you'd want to be, but you are making your top priority as a single mom or single dad, building that heart-connected relationship with your kids.
The other thing I would like to add is that if you're a single parent, you should not be afraid to receive help or ask for help. So often, I know that there are people in the community and church and school who want to help you, and yet I know that experience. I've seen it with my sister-in-law who's a single parent where they say we'd like to help, and she just doesn't quite know how to say yes or what exactly would be helpful. So I would encourage you to make that list of what would be helpful so that you can have an answer when people say, how can I help you? And please say yes. Receive the help. And there's no guilt in that. And I would also add there's no guilt in asking for help either.
Here's a second question. I had my 10-year-old daughter before I was married. I then married his father. Then we got divorced. And honestly, I've been in and out of bad relationships. God's finally got me on solid ground. I'm in a good church, but I'm scared my daughter's going to go down the same path I did. What can I do to help her?
I think that is an understandable fear and something that we're really hitting on that a lot of single parents feel. And the reality is that none of us have these perfect lives, and our stories are important for our kids to see and understand. And really focusing on your relationship with your daughter, as Rob already said, so that you have an open door with her, that you have an open heart relationship where you're able to talk about the things, especially the mistakes you've made and what you've learned from them. I think so often kids are very fascinated and want to know our stories as parents, and it's something that we don't take the time often to do. And I would encourage any mom with those types of, or any parent with that fear, is that not to be afraid of letting your child into what got you where you're at right now in an age appropriate way. You don't need to dump too much. You never should go to your child as a sounding board, as a counselor or something like that. That's a very different thing. You're not going to your child for your own emotional support or your own help. That is ill-advised. But letting your child into the mistakes that you've made, the things that you would like to do differently, that helps your child not to have a lot of mystery around those things, and it builds your relationship. But I also like to say, for those parents who are not in another relationship, going back to the single parent, they have one advantage over the married couple that they may not have ever really understood before. And I want to share that when you are a single parent, you make up all the rules. You decide how things are going to be handled. You are in charge of that. And a married couple has to work often, a husband and wife, right, to come up with that together. So you often say in your talks, Rob, that, our priority with God is the most important relationship. Then our priority with a spouse is the most important relationship. And then the relationship with your kids. But if you're a single parent, you don't have that second one. You don't have right now a person that's in that spouse or significant other. So you have a relationship with God that is your top priority, and then your relationship with children. And that often can feel lonely. But if you sort of frame that a little different, that God's put you in a season where now, okay, I don't have to come to agreement with anybody.
Right. And you're able to give special focus to your kids in a unique way.
In a very unique way. And I've found that in conversations with single parents that helps them, empowers them to realize that God's given them a window that's very different than a household where, it's a two-parent household.
Right. This question, they're really asking this concern, and they're burdened about, what the Bible talks about is like generational patterns or even generational curses, to say, hey, I had this brokenness and hurt in my life, and I don't want to see my child follow in these same footsteps. And Exodus chapter 20 talks about how sinful patterns can spread, right? From one, it says, to 3 and 4 generations. So in my situation, I came from a background of a lot of divorce in my family tree.
Yes.
And so some of these generational patterns need to be dealt with in prayer. So I remember my mom pulled my brother and me together. She talked to us about how divorce, unbiblical divorce, had spread through our family tree, and that we needed to pray. We need to go to God and say, God, we see this in our family tree. We confess it in our family tree. We want you to break this generational curse, this generational pattern in us. Give me and Mark lifelong Christian marriages. Amy, you were talking about being honest with your kids. I was reminded of Proverbs 23:27. Solomon says to his son, let your eyes observe my ways. In other words, son, I want you to look at my life. And then he goes on to talk to him about sexual things. And so Solomon says to his son, look at my life. Look how perfectly I've behaved in this area of sexuality. Well, obviously that's not the case if you know your Bible. Solomon's life was an unmitigated disaster when it came to sexual sin. And he's telling his son, he's saying, son, look at my life. Don't do it like me. Don't follow my example. Look at all the ways I've suffered because of my choices in this area. So here's a parent who is being direct with that older child. Again, we're not talking about little ones here. We're being direct with that older child about your burden, about your concern of the generational patterns, and facing into it together in prayer and faith.
Also, something about breaking generational sin isn't pretty. It's not going to look like, okay, now we're going to do it all it's all going to look rosy and perfect now. In reality, breaking generational sin patterns is ugly. It's messy. And so, you're going to have a lot of hard days. And, when you're learning as a family to kind of, have to regroup, and whatever brought you into that situation of being a single parent, you're learning something new, and it is messy. It isn't pretty.
Absolutely.
And so, accept that. Accept that it reminded me, like when Jesus came and defeated sin, it's ugly. It required a lot of pain and suffering on his part. And so if your family is breaking, specifically, as Rob talked about, a generational sin pattern of divorce, and often that just can include so many different things that put you into that position. But keep realizing that Jesus is in the midst of all of that.
Amen.
And seek his word, and remember that there is hope and healing through this process. Okay, our next question, number 3. I am married, but I'm spiritually single. My husband isn't a Christian. He has a good relationship with the kids, but doesn't want anything to do with spiritual conversations. He doesn't go to church with us, except for sometimes he will go on Christmas or Easter. This whole situation makes me feel lonely, and sometimes I don't know how to talk to the kids about it.
Well, this is a great question, and thank you for sharing it. This was the situation that Amy and I both grew up in. We both grew up in homes with Christian moms and non-Christian dads. And Amy's father, by the grace of God, came to Christ after we were married. My father came to Christ just weeks before he passed away. But this is the home that we grew up in.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I experienced my mom doing so well in this situation, even though I did see everything that's kind of reflected in that question there. I saw the frustration. I saw the loneliness. I saw all the things that entailed having parents where one was a Christian and one was not a Christian. But what I would say that I also witnessed in a very positive way was my mom's respect and support for her husband in such a way that, in so many of the ways of the running of our home, my dad was clearly the one in charge, and my mom had a lot of respect for that, even though there was this whole other area of our life, this spiritual area that he clearly wasn't in charge, and clearly
moms
wasn't.
Were the spiritual leaders in our
clearly
homes. Yeah.
Wasn't a part of, and I think that because she did such a great job of affirming him, thanking him for all that he did do for our family, the leadership, it kept his heart soft toward the gospel. And to be honest, I think he was really surprised to see all three of his children so embrace the Christian faith. I don't think he was expecting that in many ways because he was clearly in charge. I think that he thought that we might eventually think more like him than choose the faith that we were brought up in with my mom. So I would just encourage you, whether you're the husband or the wife in that situation, to be so aware of treating your spouse with respect and submitting one another in reverence of Christ. But, depends on husband or wife what that might look like. But that solid relationship is really important for your kids, and not letting the spiritual thing waylay you or, again, deceive you that you should treat your spouse negatively or, become more isolated with your kids so that you're this separate world. You want to be a family, even if you're not all on the same page spiritually.
Yeah. Yeah. And this mom asked, part of her question was, I don't know how to talk to my kids about it. Mm-hmm. I remember a conversation with my mom that was very difficult but so important. It took a lot of courage for her to do this. But I was probably 13, 14 years old. And she had to say to me, son, me and your dad, as you know, we're on different pages with spiritual things. And you sort of have two paths laid out for you. You're a teenager. You're almost a man now. And you're going to have to make a choice at some point. There's a fork in the road. Are you going to follow the faith that I'm trying to pass to you, or are you going to follow your father's example? And he was a secularist and atheist and agnostic, and pick your term with all that. And when you have those teenage children, there is a lot of power in looking them in the eye in love. And it's not, to your point, Amy, it's not shaming this other parent or belittling this other parent, but it's just being direct with your children to say, look, I'm sorry you're in this situation. I'm sorry that you've got kind of two choices that are being presented to you, or two paths that your parents have before you. But the time's coming where you're going to need to really make a choice for yourself. I can't make the choice for you. Now, I, as the Christian parent, want you to follow Jesus. I want you to pray for your father or pray for your mother who doesn't know the Lord. I want you to follow Jesus with your whole life. But having that direct conversation, so powerful and so helpful. And we hope this conversation has encouraged you. Our ministry has a 5-part video Bible study called Encouragement for Single Parents. And we're giving away 10 digital access packages. So you can get all these videos and the workbook. This is available at our web store at visionaryfam.com. But for the first 10 people who email us at podcast@visionaryfam.com and request the Encouragement for Single Parents video Bible study, we would love to give that to you. Don't forget, for families in the Midwest, our Visionary Family Weekend Away, June 11 to 13, 2021. An incredible retreat experience for your family. If you're a single parent, it'd be a great weekend for you to experience with your kids. All the information is at visionaryfam.com/retreat. The deadline for registration is April 30th, so don't wait to get that info and get your family registered. And we look forward to our next time together here on Family Vision.